The alien ship appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning. It was huge and silver, shaped like a crystal that caught the sunlight and threw it back in rainbow colors. People all over the world stopped what they were doing and looked up at the impossible sight hanging above their cities. Captain Lee Daho stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship called Stellar Harmony. He was a tall man with graying hair and steady hands. He had fought in 3 wars and thought he had seen everything. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The aliens had been watching Earth for 3 years. They studied human weapons from far away using special machines that could see across space. They counted every missile, every tank, every gun that humans owned. They watched soldiers practice shooting and saw how accurate human marksmen could be. They recorded the power of human bombs and explosives. Commander Vextal led the alien fleet. He was sure he understood humans completely. In his mind, humans were a species that liked to fight from far away. They used guns and missiles and bombs. They were good at it, but that was all they knew how to do. The aliens called themselves Valerians. They were tall and thin, almost like walking glass sculptures. Their skin was clear and lights moved under it in pretty patterns. When they were happy, the lights glowed bright blue. When they were thinking hard, the lights turned purple. Ambassador Krineth was their leader. He came aboard the human ship using a machine that turned his body into light and then back into solid form again. It was amazing technology that humans could barely understand. Lee watched the alien appear in front of him. The creature was almost 3 meters tall and moved like water flowing uphill. When it spoke, a small box hanging around its neck changed the alien words into English. "Captain Lee," the alien said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "Your people have impressed us very much. We have watched you fight. We have seen your weapons. Your guns are powerful. Your missiles are accurate. Your explosives destroy everything they touch." Lieutenant Commander Park Hye-jin stood beside her captain. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had studied alien technology for 5 years preparing for this day. She knew that the aliens had been watching, but she also knew they had not seen everything. "We want to make a deal with you," Krineth continued. The lights under his skin flowed faster now, showing excitement. "We will give you our shield technology. We will share our energy weapons. In return, you will teach us about your ballistic weapons. You will show us how to be better at ranged combat." Lee nodded slowly. The offer was exactly what Earth's leaders had hoped for. Advanced alien technology in exchange for human military knowledge. It seemed like a fair trade, but Park Hye-jin knew something the aliens did not. 3 levels below the bridge, in a section of the ship marked with warning signs, Colonel Kim Min-soo was already working. He had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. The colonel was a quiet man who rarely smiled. He ran Earth's most secret military program. While the aliens watched human armies practice with normal weapons, Kim had been developing something completely different, something the aliens would never expect because nothing like it had ever existed before. The meeting continued for 3 hours. The aliens spoke with great respect about human marksmanship. They praised the power of human artillery. They wanted to learn how humans could hit targets from such long distances. "Your species has a gift for projectile weapons," Krineth said. "In all our travels across the galaxy, we have never seen such skill with kinetic force weapons." Lee accepted the compliments politely. But inside he was thinking about the reports from Kim's secret facility. The aliens thought they understood human warfare, but they had only seen the obvious parts. The Valerians had studied human technology for 3 years. They had watched tank exercises and fighter jet maneuvers. They had recorded the explosions from bomb tests and measured the speed of bullets. They thought this was all humans could do in a fight. They were wrong. Deep in Earth's most secure bunkers, human scientists had been working on projects that had nothing to do with guns or missiles. They had been studying a completely different kind of warfare. The kind that came from understanding that sometimes the best weapon was not a machine at all. As the meeting ended and the aliens prepared to return to their ship, Kim was already activating Protocol 7. This was the code name for Earth's strangest military project. The aliens respected human firearms, but they had no idea what humans could really do when they got creative about fighting. The formal alliance was signed that afternoon. Earth would share its ballistic technology and marksmanship training. The Valerians would provide advanced shields and energy weapons. Both sides felt they had made a good deal, but Colonel Kim knew that the real test was still coming. Somewhere out in space there were threats that conventional weapons could not handle. When that day came, The aliens would learn something new about human warfare. They would discover that humans did not just fight with machines. Sometimes they fought with ideas so strange that no one could predict them. Sometimes the best weapon was not the most powerful one, but the most unexpected one. The aliens left Earth that day thinking they understood human military capabilities completely. They were confident in their analysis and pleased with their new alliance. They had no idea what humans were really capable of. 6 months passed after the alliance was made. Earth and the Valerians shared technology and trained together. Human soldiers learned to use energy shields. Valerian warriors practiced with human rifles. Everything seemed to be going well. Then the emergency signal came. Admiral Won Jae-hyun was drinking coffee in his office above Earth when the red light started flashing. He was a big man with tired eyes who had been in space for 20 years. The message that appeared on his screen made his coffee grow cold. 3 Valerian worlds were gone. Not just attacked or damaged, completely gone. Eaten. The enemy called themselves the Devourer Swarm. They were like giant insects the size of cars, with hard shells that looked like black metal. They moved in groups of millions and ate everything in their path. Plants, animals, buildings, even the dirt itself. Nothing was safe from them. Commander Oh Sung-min had just returned from the front lines. He was pale and shaking when he gave his report to Won. His uniform was torn and there were scratch marks on his helmet. "Admiral, they are like nothing we have ever seen," Oh said. His voice was quiet and scared. "They do not talk. They do not negotiate. They just eat everything and make more of themselves. The Devourers reproduced by eating. When they consumed living things, they could create new warriors in just a few hours. A single Devourer could become 10 Devourers by the end of the day if it found enough food. Our energy weapons barely hurt them," Oh continued. "Their shells are too thick. Human bullets work better, but there are so many of them. We kill 100 and 200 more appear. We kill 1,000 and 5,000 more come out of their breeding holes." One called an emergency meeting. Representatives from both Earth and Valerian forces gathered on the big space station orbiting Mars. The room was full of worried faces and nervous energy. Captain Eugenia represented Earth in the meeting. She was a smart woman who spoke 5 languages and understood alien technology better than most humans. When she saw the battle recordings from the front lines, her face went white. The videos showed Valerian cities being consumed like food. The insect creatures swarmed over buildings, tearing them apart with their sharp claws. They moved so fast that the camera could barely follow them. In just 3 days, a city of 1 million people became an empty wasteland. General Morteth was the leader of the Valerian military forces. He was old even by alien standards, and his skin lights flickered weakly when he was upset. Today they were barely glowing at all. "We have lost 3 worlds in 2 weeks," he said. "Our most advanced weapons cannot stop them. They eat our energy blasts like food. They absorb our plasma shots and grow stronger." The general showed more videos. Valerian starships firing their most powerful weapons at the Devourer swarms. The energy beams hit the creatures directly, but they just shook it off and kept coming. "What about your biggest bombs?" asked Captain Lee Daeho. "Surely nuclear weapons could destroy their breeding areas." Morteth shook his head sadly. "We tried that on the second world. The nuclear explosion killed many of them, but the radiation made the survivors grow larger and stronger. They seemed to feed on the energy." The room fell silent. If nuclear weapons only made the problem worse, what else could they try? Colonel Shin Eunbi had been quiet during the meeting. She was a short woman with gray hair and a calm voice. She ran Earth's Advanced Weapons Research Program. While everyone else was talking about bigger guns and stronger bombs, she was thinking about something completely different. "General," she said finally, "you are thinking about this the wrong way." Everyone turned to look at her. Morteth's skin lights flickered with confusion. "We have been fighting them like they are a normal enemy," Eunbi continued. "We use our strongest weapons and hope to overpower them. But they are not a normal enemy. They eat power and turn it into more soldiers." "What are you suggesting?" one asked. Eunbi smiled for the first time in weeks. "I am suggesting we stop trying to outmuscle them. Instead, we should outthink them." "But how?" Yu asked. "They are a hive mind with millions of warriors. They can coordinate perfectly and overwhelm any position." "That is exactly the problem," Eunbi said. "They think like a machine. They expect logical responses to their attacks. They expect us to fight them the way everyone else has fought them." She stood up and walked to the big screen showing the latest battle reports. "What they do not expect," she said, is for us to fight them with something that makes no logical sense at all. The alien generals looked confused. Even the human officers were not sure what she meant. 6 months ago, we promised to share our military knowledge with our Valerian friends, Yunbi said. We showed them our guns and missiles and bombs, but we did not show them everything. She touched a control on the table and new images appeared on the screen. The images showed a facility deep underground, with soldiers in strange uniforms and equipment that looked like nothing anyone had seen before. It is time, Yunbi said, to show our friends what happens when humans get really creative about warfare. Admiral Wan smiled. He knew what she was talking about. For months he had been reading reports about Protocol 7, wondering when they would finally get to use it. Are you sure they are ready? He asked. Admiral, Yunbi replied. They were born ready. The briefing room on the Earth ship Indomitable was completely quiet. Colonel Kim Min-soo stood at the front of the room, his hand hovering over a control button. Around the table sat the most important military leaders from both Earth and the Valerian Empire. Ambassador Krineth leaned forward in his special chair, his skin lights glowing with curiosity. General Mordeth had his forearms folded, waiting to see what the humans had been hiding. Kim pressed the button and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. What they saw made everyone gasp. The image showed a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a tank. It was covered in thick, dark fur and had claws as long as kitchen knives. Its eyes glowed red from cybernetic implants, and metal plates were attached to its skull and spine. But the strangest part was its size. The creature was huge, almost as big as a small car. This, Kim said in his calm voice, is a honey badger. The aliens looked confused. Their translation devices were having trouble with the words. I do not understand, Krineth said. This appears to be some kind of animal. How is this relevant to military operations? Dr. Choi Hyunwoo stepped forward. He was a thin man with thick glasses who had spent his entire life studying genetics. On Earth, he explained, honey badgers are known as the most fearless animals in existence. They are small, but they will attack anything that threatens them. Lions, elephants, even humans with guns. The hologram changed to show footage of a normal honey badger from Earth's wildlife. The small animal was fighting off 3 lions at the same time and winning. They have incredibly thick skin that can stop bullets, Choi continued. They are immune to almost every poison and venom. Most importantly, they never give up. Ever. They will fight until they win or until they die. General Morteth's skin lights flickered with what humans had learned meant confusion. But this is still just an animal. How can it help us against the Devourers? Kim smiled for the first time in months. Because we did not leave them as normal animals. The hologram changed again. Now it showed the enhanced honey badgers in a training facility. There were dozens of them, each one the size of a motorcycle. They were tearing through steel barriers like they were made of paper. Their claws cut through titanium metal. Their teeth could bite through concrete. We took the natural abilities of honey badgers and made them better, Dr. Choi explained. Much better. The room watched in amazement as the creatures demonstrated their enhanced abilities. One badger jumped 10 meters straight up in the air. Another dug through solid rock like it was soft dirt. A third one walked through a wall of flames without even slowing down. We made them bigger and stronger, Choi said. We improved their intelligence so they can understand complex orders. We gave them cybernetic implants so they can communicate with each other and with human handlers. Lieutenant Commander Nam Soo-hyun stepped into the light. She was a tough-looking woman with scars on her arms from training accidents. I am the head trainer for the Honey Badger Brigade, she said. I have worked with these creatures for 3 years. What exactly do they do in combat? Asked Captain Eugenia. Nam smiled. They do what honey badgers have always done. They attack everything in sight and refuse to stop. The hologram showed training exercises against robot targets designed to simulate devourer warriors. The enhanced badgers ripped through the robots like they were made of cardboard. When the robots tried to surround them, the badgers simply fought in all directions at once. The devourers expect logical military tactics, explained Captain An Min-jae, the brigade's tactical coordinator. They expect formations and strategies and retreat when outnumbered. Honey badgers do not retreat, Nam added. They do not understand the concept of being outnumbered. If you put one honey badger against 1,000 enemies, it will attack all 1,000 without hesitation. Ambassador Krineth was having trouble processing what he was seeing. But surely there must be limits to their effectiveness. They are still biological creatures. Dr. Choi pulled up medical data on the enhanced badgers. Their modified skin can stop energy weapons that would vaporize normal creatures. They heal from wounds 10 times faster than any natural animal. They can survive in environments that would kill most life forms. Most importantly, Kim added, they are completely immune to fear. The psychological warfare that the devourers use against other species is useless against them. The Siku hologram showed footage from a test where scientists had exposed the badgers to the same fear-inducing chemicals that devourers use to paralyze their enemies. The badgers completely ignored the chemicals and continued attacking. They cannot be scared, they cannot be reasoned with, and they cannot be stopped, Nam said. They are the perfect weapon against an enemy that relies on overwhelming force and psychological intimidation. General Morteth was studying the tactical data that appeared alongside the footage. How many of these creatures do you have? Currently, we have 200 fully trained combat badgers, Kim replied. Each one is capable of taking on dozens of devourer warriors simultaneously. But how do you control them in battle? Morteth asked. If they attack everything in sight, how do you prevent them from attacking your own forces? Lieutenant Commander Nam laughed. That is the beauty of it, General. We do not control them. We aim them. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed badgers working with human handlers. Each handler carries special equipment that marks enemy targets. The badgers can distinguish between enemies and allies through scent markers and electronic tags. Once they are deployed, Captain An explained, they operate independently. They seek out enemy forces and engage them according to their enhanced instincts. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed what they had learned. The humans had taken one of Earth's most aggressive animals and turned it into a weapon of war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. When can they be deployed? General Morteth asked finally. Colonel Kim checked his watch. The transport ships are already being loaded, General. The Honey Badger Brigade can be ready for combat in 6 hours. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that humans were learning to recognize as amazement mixed with concern. They had asked for human military assistance. They were about to get something far more than they had bargained for. The planet Kelthera had been beautiful once. Now it was a wasteland covered in black holes and twisted metal. The devourers had been there for 2 weeks, eating everything they could find. From space, the planet looked like it had a disease. Major Lee Sunwoo sat in his drop pod, checking his equipment one more time. Around him, 6 enhanced honey badgers waited in their special restraints. Each badger weighed almost 200 kilograms and wore armor plating over their vital organs. The badgers were calm, but alert. Their red cybernetic eyes glowed in the dim light of the pod. Lee could hear them breathing deep and steady. They knew what was coming. All handlers, report status, came the voice of Admiral Wan through the communication system. Handler Alpha ready? Lee replied. Badgers are secure and showing normal vital signs. Around him in space, 49 other drop pods were preparing for the same mission. Each pod carried 1 human handler and a pack of enhanced badgers. It was the largest deployment of the Honey Badger Brigade in history. Sergeant First Class Hong Minji was in the pod next to Lee's. She had been working with honey badgers longer than anyone else in the program. Her pack included Fury, the largest badger in the brigade. Fury was almost the size of a small truck and had never lost a fight. Remember, Hong said over the radio, we are not commanding these badgers like normal soldiers. We are pointing them at the enemy and getting out of their way. The pods were designed to look like space debris when they entered the planet's atmosphere. The Devourer anti-aircraft systems were programmed to shoot down ships and missiles, not random chunks of metal falling from space. 60 seconds to launch, announced the flight controller. Lee looked at his badgers one more time. They were all awake and watching him with intelligent eyes. The leader of his pack was called Chaos, a female badger with scars across her snout from training exercises. She had killed more robot targets than any other badger in the program. Ready, girl? He asked her quietly. Chaos made a low growling sound that might have been agreement. Or it might have been eagerness for the fight to come. Launch sequence initiated, the controller announced. Lee felt his stomach drop as the pod shot out of the transport ship and toward Kelthera. Through the small window, he could see the other pods spreading out like seeds in the wind. They were aimed at different targets across the main Devourer hive complex. The trip through space took 20 minutes. As they got closer to the planet, Lee could see the damage the Devourers had caused. Entire cities had been reduced to holes in the ground. Forests had been stripped bare. Even the rivers looked black and poisoned. Entering atmosphere, the pod's computer announced. The pod began to shake as it hit the planet's air. Lee could hear the Badgers shifting in their restraints, but they stayed calm. They had done this in training hundreds of times. On his tactical display, Lee could see heat signatures from the surface. There were thousands of devourers moving around the hive complex, maybe tens of thousands. Any normal military force would be overwhelmed in minutes. But honey badgers were not normal. 30 seconds to impact, the computer said. Lee checked his weapons one more time. He carried a rifle that fired special marking bullets. When he shot a target, it would be covered with chemicals that the badgers could smell from a kilometer away. It was like painting a target that said, "Attack this." 10 seconds. The pod hit the ground with a crash that rattled Lee's teeth. Immediately, emergency bolts exploded and the sides of the pod fell away like flower petals. Fresh air rushed in, carrying the smell of alien soil and something else, something that smelled like death and hunger. The badgers smelled it too. Chaos lifted her head and her eyes began to glow brighter. The other badgers started making low rumbling sounds deep in their chests. "Release sequence initiated," Lee announced into his radio. He pressed a button and the badger restraints opened with soft clicking sounds. For a moment, all 6 badgers just sat there sniffing the air and looking around. Then Chaos saw the first devourer. The alien creature was about 50 meters away, moving toward their landing site. It looked like a giant black beetle with too many legs and claws like swords. When it saw the humans and badgers, it made a high screaming sound and charged. Lee started to raise his rifle, but Chaos was already moving. The enhanced honey badger launched herself at the devourer like a furry missile. She covered the 50-meter distance in 3 seconds and hit the alien creature with the force of a speeding car. The impact sent both creatures tumbling across the rocky ground. The devourer tried to use its claws, but Chaos was too fast. She rolled under its attack and bit down on what might have been its neck. There was a wet crunching sound, and the devourer stopped moving. The other badgers saw this and decided it looked like fun. Within seconds, all 6 badgers had scattered in different directions, each one looking for their own devourers to fight. Lee could hear similar sounds coming from the other landing sites across the hive complex. "Phase 1 complete," he reported. "Badgers are deployed and engaging enemy forces." Through his binoculars, Lee could see the beginning of chaos. The devourers had been moving in organized patterns like a well-trained army. Now their formations were breaking apart as badgers appeared everywhere at once. The alien creatures tried to respond logically. When one badger attacked, they sent reinforcements to surround it. But the badgers did not fight like normal soldiers. They did not stay in one place to be surrounded. Chaos had already killed 3 more devourers and was chasing a 4th into a tunnel. When a group of aliens tried to trap her, she simply dug a new tunnel and popped up behind them. Lee watched through his scope as similar scenes played out across the battlefield. The Honey Badger Brigade was doing exactly what they had been designed to do. They were turning organized warfare into absolute chaos, and they were just getting started. "All handlers," came Admiral Wan's voice over the radio. "How do the badgers look?" Lee watched Chaos emerge from underground with a devourer head in her mouth, which she promptly threw away to chase 2 more aliens. "Sir," he replied, "I think they are having the time of their lives." The devourer Hive Queen received fragmented reports from her warriors that made no tactical sense. The invaders were not using weapons in any recognizable pattern. Instead, they seemed to be biting and clawing their way through defensive positions with complete disregard for casualties or strategy. On the surface of Kelthera, the honey badgers had found their element. Private Park Woojin watched in amazement through his tactical display as Badger Alpha 7, nicknamed Chaos by the handlers, single-handedly dismantled a devourer artillery position. The creature had tunneled beneath the emplacement, emerged in the center, and was systematically destroying equipment and defenders alike. "This is insane," transmitted Captain Ryu Hyona from her observation post. "They're not following any recognizable attack pattern, but they're incredibly effective." The Badgers fought with a combination of enhanced intelligence and primal fury that confounded the Devourer's hive-mind tactical responses. When the insectoids tried to surround individual badgers, the creatures would burrow underground or climb vertical surfaces. When they attempted to use superior numbers, the badgers would scatter, forcing the Devourers to split their forces. Master Sergeant Kim Do-hyun, coordinating from orbit, marveled at the tactical data streaming in. The Devourers keep trying to predict behavior patterns, but there aren't any. Each Badger is essentially running independent berserker protocols. The enhanced creatures had turned the Hive complex into their personal playground of destruction. They ignored conventional tactical objectives, instead focusing on whatever seemed most interesting at the moment. Sometimes that meant destroying critical infrastructure. Sometimes it meant pursuing individual Devourers through kilometer-long tunnel systems. From their command vessel, the Valerian observers watched in stunned silence as their advanced sensors tracked the complete breakdown of Devourer defensive coordination. How is this possible? Ambassador Kreeneth asked Captain Baek So-hyun, Humanity's tactical liaison. Simple, she replied with a slight smile. We weaponize stubbornness. Deep beneath the surface of Kelthera, the Devourer Queen made a desperate decision. She had never faced an enemy like this before, and her usual tactics were completely useless. The invaders seemed to ignore all logical military thinking. The Queen was enormous, the size of a building, with a brain that could control millions of warriors at once. She had conquered dozens of worlds by using perfect coordination and overwhelming numbers. But these strange creatures were making her warriors act like frightened children. She decided to sacrifice everything. The Queen began converting the entire colony's biomass into warrior forms. She stopped all reproduction and construction projects. She recalled every worker from the tunnels and transformed them into soldiers. She even began breaking down the walls and buildings to create more fighters. Colonel John Tae-hyun was monitoring the situation from the command ship when his sensors detected massive movement in the deep levels of the Hive. The readings were incredible. The number of heat signatures was growing exponentially. Admiral, he reported to Won Jae-hyun with concern in his voice, they are mobilizing everything. The estimated enemy force is increasing beyond our calculations. On the surface, the honey badgers suddenly found themselves facing impossible odds. What had been thousands of Devourers was now becoming tens of thousands. New warriors were pouring out of every tunnel, every crack in the ground, every building. Any normal military force would have called for immediate evacuation. The smart tactical move would be to retreat and regroup with heavier weapons. The honey badgers looked at the approaching army of aliens and had a different reaction entirely. They got excited. Badger Beta 3, handled by Corporal Lim Yujin, had been cornered in a collapsed section of the Hive by approximately 200 Devourer warriors. Standard military thinking would suggest this was an impossible situation, requiring immediate rescue. The Badger examined the situation carefully, counted the enemies surrounding her, and then did what honey badgers had been doing for millions of years. She attacked all of them at once. Lim watched through his binoculars as his Badger began working her way through the enemy formation like she was doing a training exercise. She bit one alien, clawed another, threw a third one into a wall, and then moved on to the next target without pausing. This is impossible, he said into his radio. She should be overwhelmed, but she is treating it like a game. Dr. Choi Hyun-woo was monitoring the biometric data from all the Badgers in orbit. What he saw amazed him. Despite facing overwhelming odds, the creature's stress levels were actually decreasing. They are not just fearless, he told the command staff. They are literally incapable of understanding when they should be afraid. Their enhanced brains can process tactical information, but their basic programming overrides any concept of retreat or surrender. The psychological effect on the Devourers was becoming catastrophic. Their hive mind had evolved to handle logical threats and rational responses, but the honey badgers represented something their species had never encountered: pure aggression that could not be reasoned with or intimidated. Lieutenant Commander Seo Ji-won was analyzing the alien communication intercepts when she made a startling discovery. The Devourers are beginning to avoid areas where they have encountered badgers, she reported. They are actually developing what we would recognize as phobia responses. The alien warriors were starting to refuse orders to enter certain sections of the hive. This had never happened in Devourer history. Their perfect coordination was breaking down because individual warriors were becoming too afraid to follow commands. On the battlefield, Sergeant Major Yoon Haeun was tracking Badger Alpha 5 through a section of the hive that had become known as the Maze. The aliens had, built complex tunnels designed to confuse and trap invaders. The Kaupo badger was having the time of her life. She has discovered that the maze echoes when she roars. Yoon reported with amusement. She is deliberately making noise to scare the devourers hiding in the side passages. The enhanced creature had figured out that her voice carried through the tunnel system. Now she was using psychological warfare of her own, roaring challenges that sent groups of aliens fleeing in panic. Captain Nam Ji-hoon was coordinating the surface teams when he noticed something strange in the enemy movement patterns. The devourers are starting to group together in large clusters, he reported. They are abandoning their tactical positions for psychological comfort. The aliens were so frightened that they were crowding together like scared animals. This made them easier targets for the badgers, but they could not help themselves. Their fear was overriding their military training. Major Park Suman watched through her scope as Tornado, one of the most playful badgers, discovered a group of 50 devourers huddled together in what had once been a command center. Instead of attacking immediately, the badger sat down and stared at them. The aliens were too terrified to move. They knew the creature could kill them all, but they could not make themselves run away. For 10 minutes, they just stared at each other. Finally, Tornado got bored and wandered off to find something more interesting. The devourers remained frozen in place for another hour. I think my badger just gave them psychological trauma, Park reported in disbelief. The battle had been going on for 12 hours now. The devourers had committed their entire population to the fight, but instead of overwhelming the invaders, they were being systematically terrorized by creatures that treated warfare like entertainment. Admiral Wan reviewed the tactical reports from all sections of the battlefield. The story was the same everywhere. Despite being outnumbered by thousands to one, the honey badgers were winning. How many casualties have we sustained? He asked Colonel Kim. Kim checked his data with amazement. Sir, we have 0 fatalities among the badgers. Badger 7 has a small cut on her paw. Badger 15 appears to have gotten lost in the tunnel system, but she is still operational and causing significant enemy disruption. And enemy casualties? Impossible to calculate, sir. But based on the movement patterns, I estimate that at least half the Devourer force is too frightened to engage in combat. Ambassador Kreeneth was watching the battle reports with his command staff. His skin lights were flickering rapidly, which humans had learned meant extreme agitation. This defies everything we know about warfare, he said to Captain Eugenia. How can so few defeat so many? Yu smiled and pointed to a display showing a honey badger chasing a group of devourers down a tunnel while making happy growling sounds. Ambassador, she said, we learned something important about the devourers today. They can be scared. And once you can scare something, you can beat it. The final assault on the Hive Queen's chamber was led by Badger Alpha 1, handled by Captain No Sung-ho, who had formed an almost telepathic bond with the massive creature. The Queen, desperate to preserve her species, had retreated to the deepest, most heavily defended section of the complex. What she hadn't anticipated was that honey badgers were natural burrowers, enhanced with technology that made underground movement even more effective. Alpha 1 simply dug around all the defenses, emerged directly behind the Queen, and ended the threat to Kelthera in the most direct way possible. The victory celebration aboard the Valerian flagship was subdued, marked more by amazement than triumph. Ambassador Kreeneth stood before the assembled command staff. His bioluminescent pattern cycling through what humans had learned indicated deep contemplation. We studied your weapons, he finally said. We analyzed your technologies. We believed we understood human warfare capabilities. Admiral Wan smiled diplomatically. What you understood was our conventional capabilities. What you didn't account for was human creativity when conventional methods fail. Colonel Kim Min-soo, still wearing his combat gear from the surface operation, addressed the Valerian leadership directly. You respected our firearms because they're logical, predictable tools of war. But humans don't just fight with tools. We fight with ideas, with innovation, and sometimes with pure, weaponized stubbornness, Dr. Choi added. The honey badgers represent something uniquely human in our approach to conflict. When faced with impossible odds, we don't necessarily look for better weapons. Sometimes we look for different attitudes. As the fleet prepared to return to Earth, carrying news of humanity's strangest military victory, Captain Park Hyejin reflected on the broader implications. The galaxy had learned to respect human technology, But now they would have to grapple with something far more unpredictable: human ingenuity combined with the refusal to accept limitations. In the cargo bays of the transport ships, the Honey Badger Brigade rested after their unconventional triumph, already being prepared for the next impossible mission. Because in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations and sophisticated weapons, sometimes what you really needed was something that simply didn't know when to quit. The Valerians would update their files on human military capabilities, but they suspected that no matter how comprehensive their intelligence became, humanity would always find ways to surprise them. After all, they had just witnessed a species that could take one of Earth's most stubborn animals and somehow make it even more stubborn. The galaxy would never be quite the same.